Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. Welcome to today's webinar on looking ahead, the future of payments innovation. My name is Gina. I work on the comms team at Airwallex, and I'll be hosting the session today. To kick things off, I'm super excited to introduce today's incredible speakers. First, we have Zhang, CEO and co-founder at Airwallex. Jack is responsible for devising and implementing the overall strategy and vision of the business. Under his leadership, Airwallex has raised over 360 million USD in venture capital funding, supported by world-leading investors. Also on the panel, we have Lisa Robbins, Global Head of Transaction Banking at Standard Chartered, and a member of the Corporate, Commercial, and Institutional Banking Management team based in Singapore. She is responsible for the bank's transaction banking activities, including cash management and trade finance. Lisa's international business career spans 38 years across Asia, Europe, and the US. Finally, we are very pleased to have Helene Li, General Manager of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong, to have her moderate the panel and bring her extensive expertise to this conversation. A seasoned management consultant and finance industry professional, Helene has held various senior management positions in strategic planning, marketing, and branding throughout her career, which also includes tenure at global consulting giant Boston Consulting Group. Before I hand the mic over to Helene, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. Firstly, everyone has been muted by default to minimize interruptions during the conversation, and we ask that you continue to keep yourself on mute. That said, we'll still love to hear from you during today's session. So if you have a question for our speakers, please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom window. We do want to keep the session as interactive as possible, so we will be responding to your questions throughout the session. Lastly, we'd like to encourage you to share insights from today's webinar with your social networks, be it on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Now, without further ado, I will hand over to Helene.
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here on this webinar and moderating what promises to be a great discussion. What a time to be talking about payments, you know, when we have the big disruptor at the background called COVID, and we have a very seasoned finance industry professional, Lisa, and also a very successful payments provider, Airwallex, Jack, the co-founder. So I'd like to start off by just having both of you share a little bit with the audience who you are, a little bit of what you do, where you come from. Maybe we start with Jack.
Thanks, Helene, and thanks, Gina, for the welcome intro. And I'm glad to join Lisa today to talk about the future of innovation in the payment space. A bit of a background on myself and Airwallex. So Airwallex is a technology company that tries to revolutionize the way business operating globally. Our financial infrastructure provides a modern tech stack for businesses of all sizes to operating internationally without the challenges of the current global financial system. You know, businesses use Airwallex as end-to-end financial service platform, whether it's making or receiving payments from customers globally or domestically. Airwallex saves businesses time and money by offering a real-time, reliable, cost-effective financial solution. Our web and API solutions support businesses of all sizes, from small businesses to large enterprises. So this is, I guess, a quick sort of brief intro of Airwallex. And I founded the company with 3 other co-founders about 5 years ago. And we have growing from a 4-people team now to over 450 people globally in 14 different offices. So I'm glad to join Lisa today, who's from Standard Chartered, our long-time strategic partner, to help us to providing the infrastructure to help us to offering the great product to our merchants and the customers around the world.
Thank you, Jack. And Lisa, could you say a few words to the audience?
Sure. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Helene, and thank you, Jack. This is really a privilege to be on the same screen with the two of you. A little bit about Standard Chartered. I think you all know we are a global bank with presence in over 60 countries. We do payments in all of those countries around the world. Standard Chartered was founded about 160 years ago in Hong Kong's backyard, Shanghai, and also in India, and then went on to become a global bank, including Africa, Europe, and Americas. So that's a little bit. We've been in this business in the business of transaction banking since our foundation. It is really core to what the bank does, and over the years, obviously, it's changed, and I think we're going to talk about some of those changes that have happened most recently in the recent past. My own background is I actually started my career in China back in the day. I think the number was 38 years ago, which is kind of a scary number. And then I became a banker and lived in Paris, Hong Kong, China, and now Singapore, and of course, New York. So I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to our topic today. And over to you, Helene.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I don't think we can begin a conversation today without talking a little bit about, the background of the big disruptor and the big accelerator in many ways, COVID, okay? So it has disrupted and accelerated the trends for so many. And I just want to, maybe turn to Jack first, through the Airwallex journey that you have built the company about 5 years ago to now, what have you seen to be the shift, the whole momentum towards a cashless and contactless society? And how has Airwallex offering, evolved over this period, and what has COVID done, to address this?
I think the company's vision is to build a global digital financial infrastructure to helping businesses to scale internationally, ultimately contributing to the growth of the digital economy. If you look across our kind of customer segment, we have close to 70% of our customers are e-commerce. About 20% is digital and technology customer, and about sort of 10% was sort of travel and education before. I think we always see a double-digit growth year on year in the last 5 years in terms of digital economy, in both sort of importing market and exporting market. From an e-commerce perspective, right? So the like of, China, the like of Southeast Asia is probably a bigger exporting market, where the like of US and Europe and the UK and Australia, probably the more of an importing market. And we see kind of, a double-digit growth in both the importing and exporting market. And COVID is very interesting, like contributing a lot into the acceleration of the digital economy. From the data we have seen in the last 6 months. We have seen kind of across all the industries, the first time user using a digital channel have increased from 33% to 50%. So that's a 17% increase in just 6 months of the time, and which we generally do not see this in a decade. And we particularly interesting to see that the increase in the banking sector. So, the first time that people using a digital financial service product have increased from 51% to 72%. So that's a 21%, close to 40% increase in just 6 months. Generally, we see this sort of acceleration only happen in a decade. Now happened within 6 months. So there's some very interesting data. I mean, obviously, Airwallex is a payment company that we have, a lot of e-commerce customers riding on top of our infrastructure, so that we see our e-commerce customers revenue. We see actually a bit of an impact in February. Everything kind of stopped for a moment almost. Then everything sort of started picking up in April and May. This year, kind of year-on-year growth over last year is close to 2.5x growth from the same period sort of last year. And even from a Q2 number perspective, we see a 50% revenue growth in the e-commerce sector alone. This is kind of how fast we see our e-commerce customer are growing. And At the same time, we see about 37% of increase in digital and technology sector, which is generally the online video streaming, virtual education, virtual remote working, and technology and service companies. And on the other side, there's the companies that related to the e-commerce sector, like logistics, for example, which closely associated with e-commerce, are growing at a pretty decent rate as well. We see a 67% increase in that sector. At the same time, we are pretty, sadly to see the revenue of OTA segment. International travel is obviously not really feasible right now, and we see about 85% decrease in the travel sector. So that used to be, constitute about 10% Airwallex revenue. Now it's below 1% of overall revenue. Then at the same time, we see a significant impact in the tuition fee payment sector, which means there's less international students are studying abroad from Asia Pacific. And we see about 34% decrease in the tuition fee payment sector Q2 compared to Q1. So there's definitely, due to the restriction, and less students wanted to study abroad, and then probably decide to take a gap year instead. So this is the very interesting data we have seen. But overall, to kind of summarize it, we see, what kind of happened normally in a decade. Because of COVID, it's been accelerated in just a matter of months. And we feel that kind of the world is basically changing rapidly. And then my kind of fear is that we're actually entering into a new world that without even kind of noticing that, and that might permanently changing how the fundamental structure of the economy, and the actual impact might be a lot longer than we imagined 6 months ago.
Yes.
I'm sure Lisa would have, a lot more insight, from a much wider sort of industry, kind of cross not just digital, but also a lot of the traditional industry. I think would probably impacted a lot more by the COVID. Happy to sort of hear the other perspective as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jack. I think it's staggering to hear your set of data points around how a whole decade is actually compressed into 6 months. It happened so suddenly and so severely. Lisa, I would like to turn to you and see what has the Standard Chartered Transaction Banking been doing to innovate and to, sort of like address this current disruption.
Let's just frame it. I think Jack did an excellent job framing what is going on. I'd like to just add a little bit about what we see actually happening on the ground to people, to treasurers, to procurement officers. It's really a sea change. We're all doing, or most of us, I think, are doing this webinar from home. And when you think about the masses of workers, particularly in the finance industry, that are working from home, whether it's treasurers or bankers or Jack's company, we're all experiencing a new normal. We hope it's not going to be normal forever, but it is a new normal. And what does that mean? First of all, the first thing that had to happen from our perspective is we needed to get into crisis mode. We needed to understand how this would impact our ability to keep the financial system going, right? Because you move out of an office, you move away from your machines, away from a whole bunch of controls into your home office. So the next thing we had to do was make sure we were protecting our people. And I think we all confronted the same issues. And then once we've done all that, we're making sure that our systems are flowing. So we had to take a look at what's going on with supply chains. What happened to our supply chains? There's a lot of discussion about disruption or dislocation. We certainly saw that, and we saw declines in trade flows that were significant about the time that Airwallex, Jack also mentioned that he saw declines. We're seeing that pick back up. But what does that mean for our clients? What does it mean for their working capital? What does it mean for risk? And those are all things that we had to consider. The other thing I would say is that those are all kind of things that you worry about, right? What happens. But the flip side is the whole COVID situation has made virtue of a necessity. we've seen a tremendous acceleration of payments. And just to quote some stats, it is expected that digital payments will grow on a CAGR of 17% between now and 2024. Right now, they're at about 4.6 trillion in terms of value. They're expected to grow to about 8.2 thereabouts trillion by 2024. And I believe that's underestimated. So our systems, our way of thinking, our cultures all need to adapt. Some are adapting quicker than others. Let's take the experience of check as an example. I'm sure many of you were old check writers. I certainly was a check writer, not in recent past, but I still write the occasional check. It's just no longer practical. And companies that were reticent to move away from checks, move away from manual payments, are now embracing digital. So we need to move quickly. So what are we doing about that? Which is really the question that I think you want us to address. We've looked at this in a number of different areas. One is, how do we make it easier for our clients to adapt? Two, how do we help supply chains and companies like Airwallex to do what they're doing best and manage the flow of commerce and funds efficiently, safely, and securely. We've obviously participated in many of the fast payments schemes that are around the world. We are, cross-border payments is a very big, inefficient segment for the industry. And we're looking at how we can move very quickly to real-time 24/7 real cross-border payments. There's a lot of work being done on that. Some of the solutions that we have done with Airwallex are really helping to alleviate some of the pain points in the process that have actually been highlighted by COVID. But all in all, I would say the future, what is Standard Chartered doing? We're focused on making sure we have the right data to support our clients and building out our data capabilities to make sure that customers have the information that they need in order to do their business and manage their working capital and manage risk. Two, we're focused on ensuring that we have the right products and solutions in this environment. A few years ago, nobody would use a QR code to make a payment. Now we've launched all over Asia. People are using QR codes, and we were one of the first in India with a company called Cashless. We are looking at ensuring that the physical and financial supply chains come together, which is a big problem in efficient supply chains. And we're doing that in partnership with different companies as well. And finally, we do a lot of co-creation. And so with Airwallex, that's a great example. But we're not doing things in a vacuum. And I would have to say one of the things that COVID has highlighted is there's no room for us to act alone. We all need to act in concert in order to take advantage of the crisis and also to minimize its impact. Working together is the future. Working alone will only hold us all back.
Thank you, Lisa. You hit the nail on the head. And that brings me to my next question, which is something that's really been on my mind for a long time. I'm so glad to have two experts like this on the same panel. You know, with the fast pace of change, collaboration is really the next competitive advantage. You know, there's no room for doing it alone. And I'm just wondering, from an Airwallex and Standard Chartered Bank perspectives, Jack, what are some of the collaborative opportunities that Airwallex has seen working together with Standard Chartered, and how important do you think that is, that collaboration edge?
Yeah, so thanks, Helene. That's a very good question. If you kind of look at the Airwallex as a company, we are infrastructure first company that we're building basically API layer sitting on top of the traditional clearing or banking infrastructure. That Standard Chartered is one of the key partners that we have across Middle East, Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. You know, from a network point of view, you know, a payment basically programmatically moving money efficiently and fast and automated, right? So to build that kind of automated network, we're looking at a few things that we want to contributing to the ultimate experience of a payment, which is coverage, so how many countries we can pay out to and collecting money from, and the speed and availability, and the reliability and security, customer experience, and also our internal efficiency. By leveraging the infrastructure that Standard Chartered have built in the last decade and even further, we're able to actually have a better coverage in the regions that are generally harder to get, for example, Middle East and Southeast Asia. And we're exploring countries in Africa as well. From a speed and availability point of view, we sit on top of a very reliable infrastructure that the Standard Chartered have been built, and also giving us the availability to accessing the fast payment networks where it's available. For example, Hong Kong or Singapore. Lisa just talked about they have great initiatives in leveraging the fast payment network that central banks like HKMA or MAS have been built in the last decade, and it allow fintech companies like Airwallet to accessing those networks by partnering with the bank. From a reliability and security and experience and efficiency point of view, that we working very closely to do API integration, to basically automating the entire transaction workflow, so there's no human intervention in the entire process when the payments is flowing through Airwallex and Standard Chartered. So everything is got straight through processing, 100%. When there's experience, ultimately the goal is to creating a seamless and this real-time experience for our customers, which are the merchants are selling online and try to, receiving the payments in the US, receiving the payments in South Asia, and then potentially repatriating the money back to the home country. And they might have remote workers, everywhere in the world, and they might have suppliers in different countries around the world, that we allow our customer to making the international payment, domestic payment, leveraging our payment network as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That's a very clear explanation. I would like to turn to Lisa about, what are some of the initiatives that you see being done and innovation in this area?
Well, there are several innovations that are out there in process right now. Whether we're talking about blockchain, we've seen a lot of very interesting solutions in blockchain. One such solution involves our regulators in Thailand as well as in Hong Kong, the exchange of blockchain payments, which is, I think, something that is going to take us into a whole new payments on a digital ledger, which will take us into a whole new sphere. And we're experimenting and working with on a number of different initiatives in that area. Two, I'd like to return to the QR codes and cashless payments. I know from my own experience, before COVID, I was not a big adopter of cashless payments. We see cashless payments as being the wave of the future. I use them at home, and so do treasurers. We're really looking at how we can make things easier for the future, and using cashless tools, whether it's QR or other alternatives, is one very, very critical future oriented scheme. The other area, I think, which is very critical to today's world, is how we make cross-border payments efficient. And that is one of the biggest areas for development that we're focused on. I mentioned earlier, and what Jack does is very helpful in Airwallex does in helping to facilitate that. But there are also broader issues at stake. Recently, the G20 commissioned a report called CPMI, which looks at payments infrastructure around the world with a view towards making it simpler, faster, and cheaper for participants to make payments. We all know that it can be very costly to make a payment, and part of the goal of this is to make payments seamless, whether it's via interoperability, AML, or sharing of common standards, which is right now one of the biggest impediments for us moving all towards one fast, easy, seamless 24/7 system. So we're spending a lot of time at that. And finally, data. It goes without saying, I think everybody's overused the word that data is the new oil. I think data is really there as a necessary discipline that we all must pay attention to. We must understand what information we have, how we can use that information to facilitate safety and security, as well as information to manage working capital. So there's a whole potpourri of things that are going on in the industry and things that we are looking at. I could boil them down, but I think I've covered them quite, given you an indication.
Yeah, I think I really like the data one that Lisa sort of brought up at the end. One of the key things, we're working with Standard Chartered is to exploring how to using the data Airwallex collected through, the payment acceptance process, basically helping merchants receiving consumer payment, whether using a card or QR or tokenization or any other sort of alternative payment method. That we're collecting a ton of data from, whether it's a consumer behavioral data or merchant transaction data from the consumers. That these data can, providing cash flow financing or invoice financing or factoring, whatever you want to call it, to those merchants that need, the cash they sold, the product they sold, they need the proceed back to, for the supply chain. And a lot of this process is not automated right now. How we can work with a traditional, I guess, balance sheet provider or, a global bank to able to, help us to work with us to providing a more automated fashion of financing, providing financing to those merchants that are selling online is going to be very interesting. So that's kind of the next stage of the explorations that could be quite interesting for our long-term partnership.
I would like to add one other thing that actually fits in with our partnership. Jack talked earlier about remittances and getting money from one place to another. 1 out of 9 individuals in the world depends on a remittance for livelihood. That's quite a significant number. We look at, we're looking at payments also from a sustainability perspective. And I think that is core to what we're doing to ensure that payments are safe and sound, but also that we have a financial inclusion objective to make sure that they're getting to people in need, particularly during COVID, where cash is becoming even less useful.
Yeah, thank you, Jack and Lisa. I think you touch on 2 very important areas through your sharing just now, the agility and the convenience, how customers really are demanding that. But I'd like to interrupt my other questions around those 2 points with a couple of questions from the audience. I think the first one is addressed to Jack, but I think it can be for both panelists. It's like blockchain, the use of blockchain as a technology. Is Airwallex has plans for that? And perhaps Jack can start first.
Yes, I mean, as an engineer by training, I actually look at the source code of blockchain myself before I even founded Airwallex. So, to me, blockchain just another way of technology. Whether you're using a blockchain, a distributed ledger, or you write your own ledger, or you derive from the blockchain technology to write ledgers like a Ripple. I think it's just a way of utilizing technology. I mean, the focus of Airwallex is ultimately providing a better experience to our customers. Our vision is all about how can we help our customers to grow internationally and contributing to that success. Whether it's using blockchain or it's using XY chain or any other technology, as long as kind of can contributing to that ultimate goal, we were happy to study and look into it.
Thank you, Jack. Lisa, you have anything to add in terms of that technology? I
actually do. We like Jack, we use it as another tool, right? It's another part of another quiver in our bow and arrow. So basically, when I look at blockchain, I think about it in 2 ways. One, it's a tool. It's another technology. But 2, it actually enables us, whether it's blockchain or distributed ledger, to do something that, particularly in the trade finance side, has been elusive. And that is take paper out of the system. And when you take paper out, you also take risk out. So there are benefits to the blockchain solution that go beyond, you know, what meets the eye. And we have done quite a few transactions using blockchain, particularly on the trade finance side, where we have done blockchain standby letters of credit between two parties, and also looking at deep tier financing. All of these things actually serve two purposes. One, safety, soundness, speed, or more than two, speed, but also if you think about deep tier financing, they enable us to get to finance parts of the supply chain that may not already have access to finance. So there's a whole host of very ancillary benefits to some of these technologies that don't initially meet the eye.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Lisa. I mean, trade finance is probably one of the best areas that we can find application for blockchain. I guess it's fundamentally kind of you know, giving more security and giving more visibility to the different counterparties in this you know, the chain of trade finance. I do you know, think there's you know, but I don't think at the same time, you know, blockchain would fundamentally changing the world of payment per se. I hope that kind of, I think my answer was a bit vague previously. I'd rather give a more direct answer.
That's fair point, Jack. I think, you know, trade finance is definitely a very interesting area to look at for transaction banking, and I'm sure for some of the central banks as well. Now, the next question from the audience is actually for both, I think, because it touches on what is the competitive edge of a key player in the payments area like Airwallex. What do you see as a competitive edge compared to others? And the same flip side of that question can be for Standard Chartered banks. Well, how do you maintain that competitive edge, you know, in the whole payments area? Maybe Jack first.
But that's a very big question. I mean, I think if you're kind of talking about the USPs, I mean, I think Airwallex USP is all about, you know, talk about infrastructure first. We have partners with more than 50 banks and financial institutions in the world to build a payment network and terminating into more than 100 countries and collecting in more than 70 countries and markets. So that from a coverage point of view, it's a pretty big barrier for, I guess, competitors to enter into. On the other front, that we have, you know, been focused on global businesses or small businesses wanting to do cross-border transactions, because Airwallex is actually, you know, built its proprietary FX trading engine. Again, you know, Standard Chartered has been a sort of long-term partner to providing liquidity through electronic trading to Airwallex, so that we can electronically pricing to our customer, but at the same time managing the risk electronically without any human traders or sales dealers in the entire process. And more importantly, we're using data and AI to managing liquidity management. You know, in a traditional world, the bank would use you know, nostrils and wastrels using a treasury department to managing the different currencies and different monies around the world. But what Airwallet's done differently is completely automated that treasury management function. Airwallet actually do not have a treasury team. So we rely on data and demand and supply to decide the currency movement and the liquidity management of the entire payment network. That does two things. One is to providing just-in-time funding so that we can make a payment from A to B as speed as possible, as fast as possible. In fact, in more than 20 markets, we can actually do it in real time for a cross-border transaction. The second is to able to giving our customers the flexibility to choose where and when to fund the transaction to us. And we want to ensure the visibility of that payments for our customer. I think the other, I guess, you know, competitive advantage, I would say kind of more longer term on the, I guess, the wider Airwallex product we're providing is the great partnerships we have been built by leveraging the like of Standard Chartered, the like of Visa. You know, we have, you know, launched our borderless card. I mean, it's the first multi-currency B2B and B2C card for in Asia Pacific, I believe, so that we allow small businesses to making card transaction in the domestic currency where they're making that payment without worry about paying extra on international transaction fee, without worry about paying a couple % extra for a cross-border transaction on a domestic card. I think that's the kind of uniqueness that we have provided, leveraging our partners, leveraging the infrastructures and leveraging the technology we have built. I think ultimately, Airwallex is the company with technology as the core to building different sort of digital financial infrastructure and applications to helping our customers to grow without a border. I mean, there's a number of things that you can do to pursuing to that vision, and we have to make sure everything we deliver to our customer is a significant uplift from the current experience.
Sure, that's very valid points. Lisa, would you like to add something to that?
We like to think of ourselves as being the connector bank. So when you think about where we're located all over the world, in emerging markets and as well as in Europe, UK and Americas, we really like to think about what it means to be a connector bank. And to us, it's very simple. We are providing our solutions to our clients, but we are also building and connecting to platforms that provide best in class. We continue to innovate ourselves, but we don't innovate by ourselves. So I think when, we're very simple. We're a large institution undergoing significant change transforming ourselves in a very interesting time in all of our history. And the one thing that I think we do that's really, really good is making sure we're connecting and bringing the best solutions to our clients, taking the time to understand what our clients need, what some of the core problems are in the market, what the direction of travel is, and then bringing those best solutions. I'm going to be really simple and leave it at that.
Yeah, simplicity is a great point. Now, there's a couple of questions from the audience around open banking. Okay, how open banking actually makes some of the transaction data available outside of the bank themselves, and how does that open banking impact your respective businesses? Would you care to share a bit of views on that?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa can go first, sorry.
I was going to say, we embrace it. So it's here to stay. And the analogy that I would use on open banking is how things have just totally changed with the music industry or with other industries. Like when you think of Shazam, you can access anything, right? You get information, you can find out what that tune is, and you can go play the tune. It's kind of the same with open banking. We are connected to, our data may be shared. In Europe, it was, I think, probably one of the best examples of open banking that occurred. People were reticent to start with, but then we realized that we as institutions need to provide value add. We need to provide the added value on top of the basics. And so open banking really gives everyone an equal chance to participate in the industry, to get information. And in today's democratization of technology, it provides an easier platform for all parties to hook into, to move from platform to platform to determine where they want to participate. And I think it enables us in the end to provide the best solutions to our customers. So I'm all for it. I don't view it as a threat. I view it as an enabler to our industry to actually be the best we can and to provide differentiated services. It's an opportunity. It's not a threat.
And Jack?
Yeah, I think Lisa have a very good point about the data side. I think that kind of covered it pretty comprehensively. I wouldn't want to add any extra on the data side. I think if you look at from a customer point of view, what benefit does open banking bring to the customers? I think that the first thing is financial inclusion, right? So that every single consumer or businesses might have many bank account. That open banking provide a way for some digital technology provider to providing a holistic view to connect to all the different accounts that you have in the third market, even in the future, maybe in a border region. So that they log into a single interface, they can look at the transaction in Standard Chartered and maybe in Airwallet and in HSBC. So that they have a single place to view that transactions. And second is providing a level of kind of fairness in a competition. That the data is shared so that the other fintech companies can leveraging that data to providing a technology-enabled solution to the customers, further to enhancing the customer experience, to providing more competition using technology in the market, ultimately helping the improvement entire financial industry. And the third thing I would say is around enablement, right? So it enables a lot of different things that we couldn't do before. I have a customer who is basically helping individual to buying US shares, and they wanted to able to connect to the bank account of the customers when they decide to onboard by the platform. And the traditional way of connecting that bank account with this US equity buyer marketplace, let's call it, is to a lot of company like Udemy doing screen scraping. So the user type in the username and password and they just do screen scraping, right? So that's not the best way to providing that experience. That is also not very secure. So that company like a Plate or TrueLayer, Plate in the US and then TrueLayer in the UK, providing a direct connectivity to the bank, and they did it one by one, but with the enablement of open banking, any company can do that. They can get a tokenization of that account and able to connect that account with that share trading platform and maybe able to pull the payment instantly if the real-time payment system is enabled in that domestic market. So them just giving a lot of different kind of applications and providing a very sort of seamless experience to the customers that we can see. I mean, there's one use case. Another one is about online payments, right? So right now, most of the online payment happens with card or digital wallet, but not too much of a bank-to-bank sort of transfer. There's obviously in Indonesia, the virtual account is actually quite a big usage, but that doesn't leveraging open banking. But with open banking, we kind of enable you have a bank account just like a digital token, just like a card, and it's almost free. So it's a cheaper way to allow the merchant to receive a payment without using the card or the wallet system, which generally are charging the merchant anywhere between the 30 basis point to 2 to 3%. Where with open banking, I think that the cost could be almost minimal, and it's also a very secure way of doing that. But there's a long way to go to kind of changing the consumer behavior to kind of get used to making that payment, a redirect to the HSBC bank account, SCB bank account, or Airwallet account to authorize that transaction other than going through the card number or they have typed in the card number or they're using Apple Pay. So I think the biggest kind of cost on that is consumer behavior change. I mean, the rise of the WeChat and Alipay, in China have taken quite a short period of time, but that's been massive amount of money pulling into the marketing and advertising to change that user behavior. I think there's a long way to go from that perspective to changing the user behavior from an open banking perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And I think that brings us to sort of like, an underlying shift in some ways, of consumer behavior or consumer spending behavior, which is being accelerated by COVID. How has Airwallex and Standard Chartered Bank dealt with that? This whole staggering set of data that Jack was telling us at the beginning, that points to a shift in customer behavior. So what are some of the initiatives that Airwallex and Standard Chartered Bank could be looking at?
Lisa, do you want to take this one or you want to?
You go first and then I'll go. It's fine.
Yeah, so I think one thing we look at is card, sort of in a B2B space, because that traditionally card is a B2C payment method, or consumer to merchant payment method, right? So consumers using a card to making payment, to buying product and or expenses, where there's less use in the B2B world. For example, if there's an SME making a transaction on Amazon, so AWS, or paying for a software subscription, or the making a payment of digital advertising, making a payment of procurement. So generally that's done, a lot of them are done by bank-to-bank transfer. But what we have been able to do is to leveraging the card network, which accepted by more than 180 countries around the world. How can we leverage the card network to making that transaction as cost effective and as secure as possible? So one of the core kind of concern about businesses making large amount payments using a card is the risk that involved and the fraud risk involved in that payment. So we in that sense we worked with the card scheme to really innovating on that to develop the multi-currency card product. Then eventually we enable tokenization, so that with the virtual card product, that we can create a card for a single purpose with the limit for that particular merchant to making a payment to a software provider. They can create a card to link to the Amazon store. They can create a card link to the AWS or Google Cloud. They can creating multiple cards to making sort of a B2B digital marketing payment in a more secure way. They can create a budget for the team, allocating a budget and giving the team a budget to building a certain product or expense on a certain project. When it comes to sort of claiming or invoicing, because everyone is at home and it's very hard to kind of claim, basically post a physical invoice as a paper to the finance department, try to do the reimbursement of the expense. We allow we're building an app which will launch soon to allow each of the cardholders to able to take a picture of that invoice and upload into the app, attach that invoice with a specific payment occurred either on a bank transfer or a card transaction, so that as people moving more remote, and we try to figure out a way to helping businesses to easily managing the expense and the reimbursement of their employees, and also helping employees able to making payment efficiently, at the same time saving them the hustle from I guess from a day-to-day management point of view. At the same time, we have launched our integration with Zero, which has allowed us real time to sync all the transactions happen on the Airwallex platform for each of the individual cardholder, or is a bank-to-bank transaction. Everything's kind of real-time synced to the Zero account, so the businesses save the business time and cost for them to managing the day-to-day bookkeeping and then the budget. There's countless number of initiatives that we have either have launched or we are preparing to launch to ultimately contributing to the growth of the digital economy.
That's great. I mean, seamless integration to help a much more kind of frictionless customer behavior. That's great. Turning to Lisa, can you offer some insights with us?
Let's go, just take a step back. What are consumers looking at? They're shifting from buying fun things to essentials. They've shifted from buying in stores to online, and I'm amongst them. And even after COVID, when the stores are open, people are staying and using online payments, online shopping. We are seeing that being a shock to loyalty. I'm going to get to the payments thing in a minute, but there's a definite shock to loyalty. There's no feeling that you have to go to the same place all the time. And it's become a very health and caring economy. And finally, one of the things that we think about we called it the homebody economy, where 70% of consumers aren't feeling comfortable yet going back into stores. So what does this mean for our whole payments? We're seeing, as we said earlier, greater adoption of digital, and that's here to stay. We're seeing cash usage decline, even interestingly, to the extent so much that in certain countries like in UK, they're thinking of coming out and legislating that cash, that they need to protect the role of cash, particularly for elderly people and others who are not digital. What are we doing about this? Well, we're looking at omni-channels, very much the same thing as Jack, but we're looking at it from a bank perspective. We're looking at how we can provide omni-channels to satisfy the needs of our multiple customer types, people staying at home and people going into the office. We're looking at the need to have multiple types of payments on a channel so that you can just easily switch from one to another, and that's all underway right now.
Great, thank you. There are some questions from the audience that actually touch on an interesting area. So I'm going to group some of the questions into, like, what are the new skill sets, you know, or talent that will be beneficial to work on this next phase, because we need people. You know, it's our biggest asset. So what do you both see as the skill set that will be beneficial, the building that talent pipeline, maybe Jack?
You know, I think the number one skill set is problem solving. I think you know humans are born to solve problems. As people kind of growing up and getting kind of more comfortable, kind of gradually we actually lost the ability to solve problems. So kind of staying, you know, kind of keep practice your brain and able to kind of staying focused on solving real world problem is the number one skill set I think we require in this sort of more of a sort of digital and technology driven economy. Then you know that's our number one sort of value that we're looking for in terms of from people when we're making hirings and recruitment.
Great. So I'd like to build on that. I was going to say curiosity, which is, I think, linked to problem solving. Curiosity is really, really critical, number one. Number two, we're looking to hire diversity. We can't underestimate the importance of having diversity of thought. And I really do believe that it's as important to have engineers and technologists as it may be to have a sociologist in your midst as we're designing what the future might look like, and maybe also somebody who has an arts background, because everything is graphic, right? So we really do need to have a diversity of thought, but the underlying thing is curiosity and the comfort in challenging the norms.
Thank you, Lisa.
I couldn't agree more, Lisa. We actually have a company value called in-depth curiosity. You know, you always sort of, you know, we ask why in order to understand how to solve a problem better. You know, we attempt to get to the root cause of any problem. You know, we welcome the question about this, and we seek opportunities for learning and growth, right? So this is the kind of core values we're looking at, you know, from people. I think it's a great point about the diversity as well. You know, we hire a lot of, you know, female leaders in our exec team to giving a different sort of perspective when we're making decisions, and we have you know, employees in over 20 nationalities, and to giving a more sort of culture mix to the company, that to help us to able to navigating the complexity better in building this vision of you know, the borderless digital payment network worldwide. And we need this sort of different sort of skill set to help us to grow. You know, I go to you know, the coffee shop next door, you know, before the stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne, and then to get coffee every day, and it's the craftsmanship, right? The people have passion of what they do, and you know, to make this, you know, really nicely sort of tasted coffee every day, and then we need the people like this, you know, in everywhere to make us to have a better life.
Absolutely. I think we can go on talking like this forever. Because there are just so many things that touches on the business of both Airwallex and, you know, Standard Chartered. But I think we really need to wrap up in the essence of time. I would like both of you to just share, like, what is the top of mind trend that you see coming out from this that would take us to the new normal post-COVID, although there's probably nothing normal about it. You know, personally, I believe that. Maybe Lisa first?
Cashless. I think we're moving towards cashless. And the speed at which that happened, I would have laughed, you know, at when we were all going back in the day, before many of your time, back when the euro came about, right? That we would be in a period of time when we're talking cashless and we're talking about tokenization and crypto. But I think these things, some of them are at different stages, but they're here to stay, and we need to understand, embrace, and think about what that will mean for all of our businesses and our communities going forward.
Thank you. Zhang?
I'll probably use the word borderless. As you know, the world continues to moving to online. The nature of online and e-commerce and digital economy is 24/7, and anyone have access to internet can access the services and the product that provided by the internet. That, you know, in the kind of digital economy driven world post-COVID, you know, we really believe in you know, we need to providing a borderless infrastructure and product and services to helping merchant and consumer to you know, get paid better and pay better.
Thank you. Cashless, borderless, seamless. I think less is more. It looks like in the new, you know, near future. So thank you again, everyone, for attending this. It's really an honor to moderate this great discussion, and I want to thank again Jack and Lisa for sharing your valuable insights with us.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks, Helene. Thanks to Lisa for making this happen.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have this conversation.